Hello everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar. Welcome, well, at least online to Strasbourg, sunny Strasbourg. We have here wonderful weather. It's warm and sunny, maybe even too warm for the season. And I'm actually, overlooking a nice piece of environment with a small river and a lot of green spaces. But maybe I can even, show you. Let's see if the camera can focus on that. Okay, sorry, I'm back. I hope you hear me. I was just trying to show you the nice weather of Strasbourg when something went wrong technically. But in any case, we are here for a webinar, and this webinar is part of the, let's say, World Forum for Democracy. It's one of the events which are organized under the aegis of the World Forum for Democracy. And this year's forum theme and title is "Can Democracy Save the Environment?" Now, this may sound like a funny question. Whenever I said that to friends, they all, just shrugged and say, "Yeah, of course. What else is there?" But then, when I actually asked them for proof of the fact that democracy can save the environment, they couldn't come out with much. So, I believe that we all trust in the fact that democracy can save the environment. It can also destroy it. The real question to me is basically, how can democracy save the environment, and who should take the lead, who should do what, and who does, best what. So this is a bit the theme of our webinar as well, because I believe, I will digress maybe a bit here, that the environment is actually a typical tragedy of the commons, that sort of paradox where the personal interest of each of us colludes with the long-term interest of the society. We all want to have a meaningful and pleasant life. We want to own things. We want to go places. We want to do stuff. And all this has a cost on the environment and has a cost on the climate. And of course, who can indeed set the agenda, who can take the measures, who can help the environment to make sure that it is sustainable. Now, of course, in this tragedy of the commons, we are many stakeholders. We are, as citizens, would have a medium-term interest in, having a good life and possibly making sure that our children as well, if we have children, will also be able to live in a normal environment, will not have to, pay for fresh air or see grass only in a museum or things like this. So we would have a medium-term interest, while politicians, with all due respect, very often would have a medium to short-term focus and interest. They think very often in electoral terms and cycles. And while companies, well, depending, local, small companies, family-owned companies would usually think more in the long term, while big corporation would think in a very short-term annual return on investment. So we have all these different interests, but I will bring one more for our seminar. It's actually the administration itself, it's the bureaucracy. It is typically believed that bureaucracies are the most likely to think in long terms, to plan for the future. I'm a bureaucrat myself. I know that we always plan for the future, even though bureaucracies are considered to be, let's say, the less likely to like to reform themselves. They may like to change the world, but not themselves. So bureaucracies are conservative. So we have today an interesting title for the webinar: Public Administration as a Green Leader. I didn't choose this title myself. I'm innocent. Don't shoot the pianist. I'm just a civil servant, but I have here with me 4 real experts whom I would like to ask to intervene. And I will, if you don't mind, ask them a couple of questions to help focus a bit the discussion. Now, first question, which I would like to address to all 4 experts, one by one. This will also give me the occasion to introduce them to you, is the following. No, I have a great piece of news. There is this new great video game, online video game, which is called Save the Planet. And if you win this game, you'll have a great present, a great surprise. So you all want to win. We all want to win this game. And you can win this game by earning points, by doing things which are good for the environment. Now, the fact is that, like any video game, at the beginning, you need to choose your character, your allies, the person or the group of persons who you will be represented by in this game. And each of these characters has special powers. One character is a simple citizen. Another character is a group of citizens. It can be an NGO, it can be a political party, what have you. You can choose to be a mayor. You can choose to be a local council. You can choose to be a regional council. You can choose to be a president or a prime minister. You can choose to be a parliament. You can choose to be an international organization, and you can choose whatever organization you want to be. And also you can choose to be a company, either a small local company or a big corporation. And each of these alliances have special powers as dictated by the law of the state where they function. Now, my first question to you would be indeed, what alliance, what character would you choose in order to win this game of saving the planet, and why? So I will maybe turn first to Ms. Maja Marinček, who is Undersecretary in the Public Procurement Directorate, Ministry of Public Administration in Slovenia. And if I understand correctly, within the Public Procurement Directorate, you are involved in drafting public procurement regulations, so rules, and also interpreting public procurement laws. And you have been working in this field for 15 years, so you have undoubtedly accumulated some significant experience. So, Ms. Marinček, in this video game, what would you choose to be? Who would be your allies and why?
Hi. First of all, thank you for the invitation to this webinar, and hello from the quite sunny Ljubljana also. Regarding this question, I think it is quite interesting. Maybe at the first glance, I would say I hope that would be national governments that also adopt different rules on how the public administration should govern certain issues, including green public procurement, because of course we know public procurement presents quite a great deal or value in national GDPs, so we can definitely say that it plays a major role in expenditure and also in giving some sort of maybe interest to also private sector on how to deal with certain things. So I think especially coming from the government, let's say from the ministry, I would say I would probably choose some sort of national leaders, let's say, or some maybe some actor from the public administration, which holds quite a lot of a lot of actually experience and also interest in procuring these, let's say, green subjects or green subject matters. So I hope that I would pick a lot of points being this character.
Thank you, Ms. Marinchek. So you believe in laws, in order, in regulations. Somehow I'm not surprised, but I will now maybe turn to Miss Marion Rumpel, who is working for the Competence Center for Sustainable Procurement at the Procurement Office of the Federal Ministry of the Interior in Germany. I understand that there she's providing trainings and consultancy to public procurers with a focus on environmental, but also, if I understand correctly, social aspects. So you have, Ms. Rumpel, a background in environmental systems, sciences and business administration. So who would you choose to be in this video game? Who would you choose to represent you to maximize your chances to win this great present?
Thank you for the introduction and invitation, and hello from Germany. I think I would choose the mayor because I really believe that this is such an important position because you can really inspire the people in one municipality, in one community, also the private people. But you also have the, I would say, power to make some great decisions for the public administration. So I see this very often in my job that one mayor can really make a difference. Also how people work in public administration and how processes are organized. And I'm quite sure that especially many mayors working together really can make a big change.
Thank you very much. So indeed, I believe that mayors can make a difference, especially if they work together. So you would like to be a mayor. Okay, good luck then. And I'll ask the same question to Mrs. Valmorbida, who is the president of the Association of Local Development Agencies. And she is expert on questions of local governance and participative democracy at the local level, coming back to the local level. So she has published several books and articles on the topics such as decentralized cooperation, local governance, inclusive and participative democracy. So, Ms. Valmorbida, who will you choose to be in this cool brand new video game?
Yes, hello everyone. Hello, Dan. Nice to be with you all today. I think that I would prefer to be the guy who is animating the video so that I can interact with all the characters proposed in the game. And I will ask my son to help me with this. But if I really have to choose, I don't know. I mean, it's hard. ALDA is working with local authorities, so I agree about local authorities being crucial. But civil society too, and we all of us are citizens. So whether we are, as Dan says, bureaucrats, whether we are mayors, we are also citizens, aren't we? Yeah, in a way or in another. So ALDA would choose to be the local community, I would say. Yeah? So there's the interaction between those two. So I think that, and we will come back to our conversation in your other questions, then I think that the multi-stakeholder approach, and it's good that in the game we are all together, because I think that this is a challenge which requires the contribution of all of us, mayors, national institutions, and citizens, and private sector, as you correctly described then at the beginning of your speech. So I think that the challenge of environment which is ahead of us requires interaction of all these various stakeholders. It's very hard to say this one will have the stage. Yes, I think it's everyone has the stage. Now, when it comes to public administration, and this is the challenge of our conversation today, I would say that in a complex governance today, I think that even public officials like you, Dan, or others, they are not puppets, that are implementing what the decision makers decide. I think that even more and more in public sector, civil servants have an immense role to implement and also to propose. While they have a role to implement and to propose, they are also subject to interaction with civil society, which is also proposing actions to support policies for the environmental changes. So I have more an integrated approach to things, which fits very much in the video that you are proposing. I think that there are always strategies together in the video games for winning. They are never fighting alone, aren't they?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Antonella. So up to now, we have someone who believes that it's central government who will win the game, someone who believes it's the mayors, and someone who believes it's the communities, the NGOs, the grassroots. So let's ask Mr. Weiner to make a decision or bring another solution to this equation. Mr. Weiner is head of the Service Center of the Sustainable Public Procurement Action Plan in Austria. He holds an engineering degree in computer sciences and a PhD in social and economic sciences. So social and economic, that's very impressive and contradictory sometimes. But Mr. Weiner, who will you be in this new game and why?
First, hello, and a warm welcome from my side here from also sunny Vienna. I'm happy to be part of your panel, and now to your initial question. All the stakeholders naturally play a role in achieving the environmental goals. But if I have to pick one, I would choose the Prime Minister. He has a significant influence in shaping the government's program in terms of the objectives of the federal administration. In Austria, a separate chapter was dedicated to the exemplary function of the public administration. According to the motto, the public sector shows the way, on the way to a climate-neutral administration. It is this exemplary function for citizens and the economy that is one of the keys to the transformation process throughout Europe, I think. However, the topics of the government program are also translated to the implementation levels through the actual work in government cooperation and through the meetings of the Council of the Ministers. The public administration is a complex structure, of course, that consists of numerous ministries with different tasks and topics. Aligning these ministries with the major environmental objectives and monitoring the successes is certainly an important task. And this is where I see the special impact to collect as many points as possible, which is why I would choose the role of Prime Minister.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you, coming from a federal country, are choosing the role of Prime Minister, it must be important. So I grant you. So we have a relatively equal score. Two voted for a central government official, one for the parliament, one for the Prime Minister, one for local government official, and one for the community itself. So we still are not completely convinced, but I'm afraid that I have to give you bad news. There is no such game. It was just a presumption, but I hope that such game will sometime in the future appear, and that it will offer such a big reward that everybody will try to play it online, but also offline. Now, let's get to the meat of our meeting today. Let's get to the actual questions. I will just briefly announce you the questions or the line of questions so that you can address them all if you wish, but I will ask each of you specifically one question. Again, you can go beyond that if you have things to add to the question. So the first one is about the role of legislation, regulation, and so on and so forth. And we already started to discuss about this with Ms. Marinček. The second one is the role of citizens. How, you know, and the third one, and we discussed indeed with Mrs. Varmorbida. The third question is about the actual technique of making sure, because three of you are specialized into procurement issues, to integrate the actual social and environmental factors into the decision making of, you know, granting a contract to a company. And the fourth question will be about, you know, how do you achieve organizational change of the frame of mind? How you change people? How do you launch reform? How do you make people believe in reform and be proficient into delivering it? So, coming back, first question to Mrs. Marinček. Tell us, what is the role of legislation, of regulations, of codes of good practices, of ethical codes, of, you know, self-regulations by companies, of, you know, local government decision making. You know, we have in the Council of Europe the European Charter on Local Self-Government, which provides for local autonomy. Who should do what, and who is the most important, and why don't they do what they should do for us to be in such a situation?
Thank you for the question. Probably speaking from my professional point of view, let's say, I think that some regulation in this field is also quite necessary. For example, in Slovenia, we have had, let's say, obligatory green public procurement for quite some time now. Actually, since 2011, we have had some form of legislation that actually contracting authorities in public procurement procedures had to apply. We now still have a decree on green public procurement, which actually defines now 22 subject matters. That means different goods and services that have to fulfill certain criteria or certain goals when contracting authorities are procuring them. And I think that if we haven't had that decree or this obligation, the percentage of green public procurement would be quite lower, because even though most definitely also people working in public administration and also, of course, at municipalities and other bodies that are governed by law, definitely I think they have an incentive to procure green products. But often I think there are other issues like general issues, both or maybe also financial issues that maybe they are more declined to do so if they are not obliged to by certain law or certain decree as we have in Slovenia. Also, maybe just let me mention that for quite a number of years we had a decree that that said that for certain subject matters, contracting authorities have to buy green, let's say, and that decree also included specific selection criteria, award criteria, even some contractual terms that had to be included in the contracting, in the contracting on the public procurement or the procurement documents. But now, from 2018, I think, or 2019, we have discovered that maybe contracting authorities do need a little bit more flexibility when procuring these green products, green services. So now our decree actually states goals that contracting authorities have to achieve when procuring any of these 22 subject matters. And since also this number of subject matters that have to achieve different goals is actually rising in not every year but every couple of years, let's say. Also because of that, the percentage of green public procurement in the whole public procurement sphere in Slovenia has just risen, and I think that is great because actually we are achieving these green goals that also, of course, even European Commission is promoting very highly or very strongly, along with social and innovative public procurement. So we are definitely trying to follow these ideas and these I would say necessary steps in public procurement to achieve a higher percentage of these green public procurements. And through this law, through this decree, this legislation, I think we are achieving that. Although, of course, contracting authorities sometimes have problems. So, for example, municipalities that have to oblige with this decree, and also some ministries or other bodies that are governed by law, for example, also schools and kindergartens, they do have, or we can see that they have problems sometimes with achieving these green goals. But also in that sense, we at the Ministry of Public Administration, also some line ministries, for example, at the Ministry for Planning, for Environment and Special Planning, they are offering, or we are offering, quite a lot of help to these contracting authorities to help them to achieve these goals in the best manner that is possible, and so that they don't have that much problems or difficulties when they are including these green goals in the public procurement, and they are more, let's say, happy to make these goals true, because of course at the beginning, when they see something new, when they have to do or procure or buy something that is that has not been bought before, let's say, or maybe if they even have to conduct some kind of market research before to see what is actually existing in the market, that is quite burdensome for this public administration or for public procurers. So we are trying to help them as much as possible. But maybe to just answer your question in brief, I think legislation or government really does play quite a huge role in green public procurement at the national and also maybe at the private level, because we are trying as national authorities to give example also to this some private entities or even citizens to see that something can be procured better, or that they can buy things and goods or services that are more environmentally friendly.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marinchek. And indeed, I think you raised some interesting points here. I think what is very fascinating to me is this relation between obligations and incentives. Indeed, how far should the law go into creating obligations, and how far should authorities go into creating incentives? Of course, to a certain extent, a law creates incentives. I mean, the risk of going to prison is a very good incentive, or paying a big fine. It's an excellent incentive. But there are other softer nudges, which I think many authorities are now setting into place. But let's, before any follow-up question or question for the public, and before going to the next expert, I have here a contribution from an expert, from a participant who says that he or she I don't see the full name, would like to be the Minister for Entertainment. So to influence the conversation in Parliament and channel the public views and attitudes through policies and regulations in entertainment. I will say I second that. I mean, I wouldn't like to be the minister herself of entertainment, but I would like to work in the Ministry of Entertainment. But now let's turn to Mr. Weiner, and let's see, what do you think? First, I think we're discussing about citizens' participation. Let's go to Mrs. Valmorita, maybe first or second. So how can citizens influence decisions taken on their behalf, in between elections? Without that, we have a lot of problems with the elections themselves, with the trust in public authorities, with the actual correlation between what citizens want and what public authorities do. So we all believe that we need to inject a bit more, input from citizens into decision making by their officials, more than simply voting for one or another. So how can citizens actually set the agenda, push their authorities, make them think also of their children or their children's children, rather than just in electoral cycles or in short to medium term?
Yes, what you describe now is the process of what we call participatory democracy. So indeed, this is this permanent dialogue, which is bottom up from citizens to decision makers between the elections and also preparing the election. So when I have to express what it means, I often draw momentum where you have two elections and then you have what's going on between. And I think that nowadays, for the complexity of our societies, for the speed and for the emergency and the urgency of the decision that should be made, we cannot wait 4 years between, before going back to the citizens and engage. So I think that the importance of this permanent dialogue with citizens is twofold. The first one is that a permanent dialogue with citizens, which is not only, when we talk about citizens, then it's not only single citizens, it's a vast group of interests. Those are people who are getting together with similar interests and similar situations. This is also the private sector. Don't forget that the civil society is also the private sector and the way the people aggregate. So they can, public sector, decision makers, and then public administration, which is actually implementing the decision makers' decisions. They receive feedback from the society with inputs, with knowledge, with expertise, with priorities, with alternative ways, with more resources. So participative democracy is not a choice, it's a must. So nowadays, public sector has no other alternative than being immensely engaged with the broad civil society and citizens. Because they need inputs, they need feedback in building policies. So the public sector per se is not enough for building public policy. It needs inputs, it needs priorities, it needs resources, as I said, because the dialogue with citizens, we often talk about that when we do that at the local level. I mean, local authorities, all of them, and I'm talking about the very rich ones somewhere in Germany or in Sweden, but also poorer ones, in other places of Europe, EU and non-EU. We are in a Council of Europe context now. All local authorities do not have enough resources for what is their task. And where do they get more resources? One is money, so they have to invent something to get more resources financially, or they have to catch and to get resources from what is the community, ideas, innovation, time, and when it regards also environment, they need the resources of the people for identifying, for instance, also private premises, or they need to understand what to do with the private citizens, belonging, how they will work with what belongs to citizens. So one, it's policy making. You need people, constant interactive dialogue and construct for policy making. Second, implementation. Because as we know, the world is full of very good laws, and the Council of Europe know that very well. So you do laws, okay, but this is the beginning of the story. To make a good law, even though it's very difficult, even if it takes a lot of time, even the regulations for being there, they need negotiation, they need political agreement, and when we talk about environment, it's even stronger because you have combination of long-term, short-term, various public and private interests. Oh, a big story. But then the problem is implementation. Because as I said, and we had colleagues from Moldova who always said that, but the world is for very good laws, and who's going to implement that? So if you don't create responsibility and you don't empower citizens with understanding, well, you have the laws and what is actually done out there. Because I don't think that only through fines, getting to prison, you can change the community. You need awareness, you need a global culture for implementing those laws or implementing what the public administration means. Documents, but also, regulations, etc. So civil society and citizens are fundamental stakeholders to promote innovation in public policies and to be an actor of input and in the implementation. How to, at the end of the day, being able to implement what has been discussed at the higher level, or I'm not really sure what is higher and lower here, at another level. So I think that this is not a choice. I think it's a must.
Okay, thank you very much, Antonella. Indeed, I would like to ask, but I will refrain from asking you, maybe if we have time at the end, if we involve the citizens in all these stages of the decision-making and implementation of the public decisions, what do we do with the elected representatives, with our representative democracy? But I will not ask you this yet. I will first let you know that the participant who had made the contribution, her name is Chitsi Terem. Thanks, nice to meet you, Chitsi. And we have another contribution from an Albanian participant who says that she would like to be Valbona Halitai. Sorry, there is a bit too much sun here. And she would like to be prime minister because that's how she would be able to influence not only public administration but directly the citizens. It's true, not only in Albania can prime ministers influence the life of citizens, but take care what you wish. It's a tough job and it's not a long-term job. Well, Ms. Merkel might wish to differ on this one, but it is a temporary position, it's a political position, it's a tough position to be in. Now, let's turn to Mr. Weiner. And indeed, we heard from Ms. Marinček this issue about legislation and incentives, and let's turn now to actual public procurement. Whereas let's say, public administrations does a sort of reverse Robin Hood action. It takes money from our pockets, taxpayers, and puts the money into the pocket of big companies for providing services. How can we ensure legislation, incentives, financial incentives, other types of incentives that social, you mentioned social, and environmental factors are accounted for into these procurement policies? How can we make sure that we don't always rule by the neoliberal, measure, whereas cheaper is always better?
Yes, thank you for the question. Maybe you allow me to give first some comment to the role of legislation, regulation, because it's really important to understand the situation of the public procurement law. The public procurement law is very exactly formulated and offers clear procedures and legal protection, especially for the business community. And the challenge lies in the implementation of these procedures together with the stakeholders on the side of the administration and the markets. And regulations, that's the point, regulations that enable the implementation of environmental criteria in procurement has to be specified in individual procurement groups. That's, I think, plays a really important role. This is about setting minimum standards. We in Austria have the NABE action plan. We are setting 16 minimum standards in 16 groups. For example, building or ICT or textiles or mobility. And I think this setting of minimum standards that may not be undercut is a really leverage. But over fulfillment is of course possible. And this is where the innovation power of the economy, I think, can develop well and give their support to the environmental goals. And now to your specific question about integration. The integration of environmental goals into procurement is multifaceted and should already begin with the design of the procurement object. The procurer is, alongside the law, free to choose the object of the procurement and is not restricted by the procurement law. For example, the pandemic has taught us that not every business trip is necessary, and especially in public administration, a contribution can be made here. But also in IT, it makes a big difference whether 1,000 notebooks or 1,000 thin clients are procured. The thin clients has a much smaller environmental impact. Furthermore, life cycle costs play an important role, for example, through extended warranty periods. Climate assessments are here very helpful in finding the right rating for the environment intenders. The province of Lower Austria, for example, even goes one step further. A planning tool is providing that records the essential aspects of sustainability and makes the offers accessible and comparable by means of a point system. And there is also opportunity to integrate environmental criteria in all phases of the procurement procedure, starting with the technical specifications. Certainly, here are good suggestions needed as to which criteria can be applied. For example, the eco-labels. Here in Austria, we have the österreichische Umweltzeichen. Maybe you know the Blauer Engel, the eco-label, the eco-flower of the European Union, or the Nordic Swan. And in Austria, the action plan for sustainable public procurement was launched in 2010, which was recently updated in June 2021 and has been mandatory for all federal institutions and bring this minimum standard to all administration units. And in 16 procurement groups, clear specifications are made on procurement criteria, from technical specifications to award criteria and contract conditions. And the NABE platform, which I may lead, is the service point of this NABE action plan. It serves as an information hub. We see a great need for information among procurement officers at all levels of local authorities and offer trainings and workshops as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, you also brought something very interesting into the discussion. Basically, well, you brought many things, interesting things in the discussion, but what raised my interest is that you set the record right and saying that basically companies, economies, enterprises are not only destroying the environment, which they do, but are also innovating and bringing solutions which can actually take us out of the mess we put ourselves in, if I may say so. And speaking about the mess, I'm afraid that my mouse has abandoned me, has gone on strike, so I will not be able maybe to read all the chats by myself. I've been abandoned by many things in my life, never by a mouse, I must say, but it's always a first for everything. So let's now go to Ms. Rumpel and see indeed after all the discussion, how can we change people? How can we implement change? How can we change mentalities, frames of mind? How can, I mean, rules are great, incentives are excellent, what have you, prime ministers are powerful, our weather is excellent for the moment, maybe too warm, but excellent. But how can we change people and the frame of mind?
So we at the Competence Center, we actually have one main task here in Germany, and that is giving trainings and courses, and we also call it a hotline. So people can actually call us with different questions regarding public procurement. And these questions are very different. It's from it ranges from very technical questions, like the specifications and contract criteria. But what we also perceive very often is that people call us, they are motivated, or at least they want to get into the topic and start, but they do not know how to do it. And sometimes, or very often actually, we see that the barriers are more in the organization itself. So questions can be like, I'm motivated, but my colleagues, they do not want to. How can I convince them? Or I'm really motivated, but I do not have time. Where can I start? And one very important criteria aspect is the commitment of the management level. So the management level really has the power to inspire the people, to help them, to give them support. This can be, for example, something very simple like a speech at the staff meeting, for example, or just after procurement has been very successful, going to the people and tell them that was a great job. And to be honest, procurement as itself, and when sustainability aspects come into the game, can be sometimes quite frustrating. For example, if you have a very complex product, it's quite usual that a process lasts for several months. You have a lot of stakeholders involved in that process. You have to deal with a lot of questions, and we have a job profile with really developed a lot. You have to be communicator. You have to be someone who is really aware of the legal aspects and so on. And when people are really motivated but still have some different questions, it's so helpful when the management level says, we support it, we give you the time, we really support you when you come up with questions regarding the risk, for example. So legal aspects can be something that really fears the staff. They do not want to dry out sometimes. And it's not something that is in their personality, but it's sometimes more in their organization. And I would say a management of one organization can really change a lot. And what we also see in this aspect of commitment of the management level is really the communication itself. So we have internal communication, for example. You can use the intranet. You can use the elevator for announcements. You can use the annual report where you integrate aspects of sustainability in procurement. It's so helpful if you give people a place for exchange, for example, to let them work in groups, to have working groups like every month, where people in charge of budgeting, in charge of law, of different questions come together, meet, have the exchange. If people can work on one procurement process in a team of 2 or 3 people, that is so valuable. Compared to that, people often work on every person on one process. They cannot ask someone, or at least there's a barrier to ask. And so really to create this atmosphere of openness and innovation is something that helps a lot. And we also have on the other side, I would say, external communication. So a public administration can learn a lot, or I would say there's potential. And especially when it comes to procurement, because procurement is often not seen. And you have the chance with sustainable products to make visible what your contribution is. For example, if you can say we have saved 100 liters of water or trees or emissions, that's something that is really important. And when you have the product, you can make that visible. For example, there exist fair trade footballs, and if you procure these footballs in a community, you can use this product to make this visible. And this is also something that gives, I would say, motivation to people, because you can make them feel like they are really making their contribution to climate protection or social aspects in their job, and this is something that is worth really a lot. But last but not least, it has always to do with resources, and this is not only about financial resources, but I would say that's more about giving people time and invest in the human resources. So allowing them to go to trainings, giving them time to develop their own ideas. Maybe they now know how best to prioritize the procurement processes, the criteria. They are really the experts, not the management level, but they need the space to come up with ideas. And at the end of the day, you need resources, because if people are under pressure and do not have time for anything that is not compulsory in that moment, it's out of the head. But altogether, when we give trainings, I'm really happy, or I would say for me it's a successful training when I go home and people start chatting with each other and I'm not useful anymore. So really when they get into contact and they have their own ideas, I think that's really one way how sustainability criteria can be the new normal in the long-term phase in one organization.
Thank you very much, indeed. Well, I like your euphemism that we should obtain the commitment of the hierarchy, so they give the right order. And I can myself testify on the fact that it's very difficult to get the interest of politicians into reforming training systems. I was myself involved in helping a couple of countries to reform completely the way they train civil servants. And I must say this was never an issue which was very high on the agenda of politicians. And it's very difficult to always find the resources in money, in time, to go through the trainings. And indeed, you have to have a system of incentives again to make sure that people actually do that. Now we have 10 minutes left, and we have 2 questions from the public. One is, I'm sorry, as my mouse doesn't work, I can't expand the name, so I will only name the first name, Dr. Charalampos. I don't see the name, who says that very often specifications of product standards in procurement procedures face considerable barriers in the central procurement authorities themselves, and we have good experts here. Basically, in short, given that green products often are more costly, how can we deal with this problem? Vlad, I think is Anasescu, I think, yeah. He believes that in the game, he would be a public administration city manager in order to interact with stakeholders in the society and to encourage participatory dialogue. Coming back to what Antonella was saying, or a leader of a network of cities, again, coming back to the same conclusions, in order to oversee a wider implementation process of public policies and to set goals. One question for the speakers is if they could summarize in a couple of words an idea to motivate the people in the position that you stated you would like to be, what would that be? That's interesting. Okay. So, Antonella, those of you who were central government, parliament, respectively, Maya, Prime Minister Gerhard, what would be the sentence that you would tell, just a few words, to the parliament or to the Prime Minister, or indeed a mayor or the citizens? So what would you tell them? Just 2 words. Memento mori. If you don't do this, our children will disappear. What would you say to them in 2 words?
I don't know if I am happy to speak first, but maybe I can. I think that the words for me, as always, are partnership and action. So you said also then that what do we do with decision makers if the whole process of democracy is modified through participative democracy and constant engagement with citizens? I think that this is an observation which is more from a national perspective, but I think that from local perspective, the mayors understand very quickly what it means to the added value, difficulties, but also added value to talk with citizens. So ALDA has many actions. We have many projects which are dealing with implementation of policies to support sustainable energies, renewable energies, and to protect the environment. And this is actions which are implemented together with citizens. Let me give you an example, and then I will be, which is self-explanatory about the opportunity of doing this kind of projects together with citizens and civil society. We have a project implemented with municipalities which are affected by flooding, and it's an area which is by the mountains, by the hills, and there are things that you can do using policies and using regulations. So how you are constructing roads and how you are constructing buildings. So to avoid to create, I'm not an expert, but you know how you urbanize your territory to avoid flooding, which is an enormous question in many parts of the world. And that's one part of the story. The other part is what do you do in your private environment to make sure that your gardens, to make sure that your how you are building, your life in this community can prevent from flooding. And we had a very interesting project, very effective, which is combining regulation and urbanization and the way the local authorities are working and building roads and building public buildings, etc., and the way that citizens are aware that they are part of the solution. So they have to be part of the policy and part of the implementation because they are part of the solution. Because this is not only building roads, this is living there. So how do you behave not to be a source of problems, but a source of solution? So I think that local authorities do not think about, who is first. They want to solve problems. And this working with citizens is extremely effective. So that's my answers. So as I said, what did I say? Action and what did I say? Partnership.
Okay, great. I guess from my side, what I would do instead of putting the picture of the president or what have you, or whatever words at the entrance of the town hall, I would probably say something like, every day you are borrowing resources from your children. I think that would be, to me, the message I would send to this. But now we have limited time left, so Gerard, Marion, you can decide which or both questions to answer. What do you tell to your character, and how do you solve this problem? Whereas sometimes specifications and audit offices exclude certain technologies. They don't allow to exclude certain technologies. And indeed, as green products are expensive, more expensive, how can you solve this issue?
Maybe if I start to the question about the technologies and producers in the standards of the procurement. My opinion here is that it's the best way if you start with a pilot project. You have in the EU procurement law the new procedure, so-called the innovation partnership, and this is a possibility to show if a new technology works. Yes, and if it is not clear in an early stage if this technology has the power to evolve and to be a good part in the market, maybe you should start small. Yes, and the procurement law is here a tool, not a barrier. Yes, you can use it, and you can use it maybe in small steps. Start small and start a pilot project.
Okay, thank you. Marian, do you want to contribute something to any of these two questions? The short message that you would have to your character and basically the conundrum between the need of efficiency and the need of promoting green technologies, green solutions.
Yeah, regarding the costs, I would totally agree. So start with pilot projects. That's something that really helps because you do not overwhelm yourself as an institution. But also I would always advise to make a very good market consultation because it's not always more expensive. It can be. And if you make a good market consultation, you really find those who are already on the way. Some of the companies are also willing to be the ones who really equip the public administration. And sometimes they are, I would say, ready to go one step more compared to other contracts. And sometimes about the costs is something that is, it's not always true. For example, in textiles in Germany, we saw it in several communities. They made a market consultation and they come up with just a few percent more expensive, but the quality they reported was a lot higher. So this you always have to make the right weight between what you really need as a quality and the price. And what we see very often is that also the quality rises. And regarding the second question, you really you've stolen my words because I would also say to the mayor, usually mayors live in the area where they work, so be aware what you're doing. You're making the decisions for your children and for your grandchildren. And you can really only win with sustainability in public administration.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we are closing the gap to the end of our webinar, and I think there were some, very rich presentations and interesting words which the experts told us. I was myself very surprised and positively impressed by the diversity of the responses to the first question, and by the fact that so many, two and basically a participant preferred the local level. And of course, for us, local level is very important. I also heard you about all the incentives and the regulations which are needed, and about the labels. The question of labels, of course, is fundamental. And just a small commercial, we also have a label which is called ELOGE, European Label of Governance Excellence, which is given to municipalities, local authorities, which fulfill a number of criteria, one of which is sustainability of policies. So indeed, you can't have the label of excellence in governance if your policies are not, let's say, influenced or based on an analysis of sustainability. And I think the question of participation, of course, comes always very strongly, and when it doesn't come into this kind of fora, these questions come in the street. And that's where, politicians pay attention. I don't promote, manifestations or even, violence, which they sometimes lead to. But I do believe that politicians should listen more to their constituencies, to the citizens, and to basically the whole of the society. I don't believe that we should have a representative democracy where you say your word as a citizen only once every 4 or 5 years. I don't believe we should have an epistocracy where only experts make decisions. I believe we still need democracies to save the environment, possibly. I don't say it's guaranteed, but I think that there are democratic solutions which can ensure that sustainability of policies is taken into account into political decision making. So I think I will put an end here. We are just 3 minutes over the program. I think we are in time. Sorry for my technical problems. It happens always at the worst moment. And I hope you had fun with this seminar, and hope that we can continue to our discussion in another format and later. And indeed, thank you all of you. Thank you, Gerhard. Thank you, Maya, who has lost the connection but is connected as a participant. Thank you, Marion. Thank you, Antonella, for your words, for your insight, and see you on another occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.